This is the New American Media.
Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles to be specific. My name's Brian Engelman. Welcome to the Unhappy Hour here on the TNAM Radio Network. Home base, thenewamericanmedia.com. Do us a favor, follow us on Twitter at American_media_. Go on Facebook and search The New American Media with spaces and like our page and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/The New American Media. The Cleveland Browns are 3-0 in the past 3 weeks. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Do you know the last time you've been able to say that a Browns 3-game winning streak has distracted you from the Indians being in the playoffs? Think about that for a second. Think about it for a second. And while you're thinking, while you're busy doing all that thinking, I'm going to introduce you to somebody. We're going to bring in Rob Trautman, host of Sports on Tap. It's a podcast based out of Brunswick, Ohio, in an area I'm very familiar with, having spent, 18 years, I believe, in that little burg, that awesome little city, Brunswick, Ohio. He's been in radio and TV for 10 years covering sports. Follow him on Twitter at rtrauty, that's R-T-R-A-U-T-Y, and follow Sports on Tap at SOT Podcast. So let's bring him in, and man, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. So how about we just get into it, shall we?
Hi, this is Rob.
Rob, it's Brian Engelman. You're live on the air, sir. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
You know, living the dream. Can't complain. I posed this question in the beginning, and by the way, before we get into it, I just wanted to say that I did tell everybody, and I'll say it again, where they can find you on Twitter. You're at rtrauty, that's R-T-R-A-U-T-Y, and at SOT Podcast. But here is my question. When is the last time, Rob, you can remember saying, hey, this Cleveland Browns 3-game winning streak has distracted me from the Indians' playoff loss?
Well, you can't say that too often, and up here in Cleveland, it's definitely a different story. The Cleveland Browns, have always been kind of the talk of the town, to say the least.
Right.
Now, especially with the Indians being kicked out of the playoffs, but the Browns are, everybody says this is a Browns town, and I think for most of the people here it is. But the Indians are a big part too, but especially now with the Indians out, the Browns are the talk of the town.
Well, let's do this, Rob, because I think we only have you about 20 minutes or so. So I guess let's bounce through it. Let's talk Indians before we talk about the fun stuff, the Buckeyes and the Browns. Just your thoughts on the season, your thoughts on what happened wrong, what we do in the offseason, things you learned this season. Just kind of do a scatter shot. Let's wrap up what you're taking away from this Indians season.
Well, I think one big thing is it starts with Terry Francona. I think that was a huge signing for the Indians, not only to maybe attract some free agents here in Cleveland, because the Indians have had, a tough time, and especially with the Dolans. A lot of people think, they're not willing to open up their wallet. But this year they signed Nick Swisher, who I thought, did an okay job. His batting average was a little bit low, but it's the leadership, and he did turn it on a little bit at the end of the season. And Michael Bourn was a surprise by all of us here that they were able to get him. So those were two nice signings. Brett Myers, the pitcher, came in, didn't work out. But in the beginning of the season, everybody thought the pitching staff was going to be the issue. And really, when it came down to it, the pitching staff was the strong point of this team. There are going to be some questions here in the off season that I'm sure we'll go over looking at this Indians team. But overall, this season was a success. Terry Francona really turned this team around. I mean, they had 92 losses a year ago, or actually 96 losses a year ago, and they improved that to 92 wins. Nobody thought probably they'd make the playoffs this year, and they did get in. The pitching staff did well. I think Chris Perez is going to be a question mark. He really had some mental problems, and that carried on the field. And a lot of the fans here in Cleveland really, want to part ways with him. And another question is Asdrubal Cabrera. He really struggled, and especially if you watch the wild card game, how many times do the Indians have runners on base and scoring position, and they couldn't score?
What was it, 9? Were we 0 for 9? Was it 0 for 9? I'm forgetting the stats exactly, but it was a ton of at-bats with runners in scoring position, and we got the donut.
Yeah, and Asdrubal Cabrera, I think it was Kipnis, Swisher, Asdrubal, And there was somebody else in there. I think they went 0 for 12 in the game, and those are key players. But then you look to Lonnie Chisenhall. He turned it on, and the lower bottom half of the lineup actually had the hits for the Indians. But Asdrubal batted, I think, .239 this year, which was very disappointing. And in that game, after Cobb just walked the batter on 5 pitches, he did take the first pitch, which was good. But then he ended up swinging, and that was a ground out into a double play, which got the Tampa Bay Rays out of the inning. And I think that was a game changer. Cobb kept getting stronger and stronger, and the Indians could do nothing offensively in that game. And I know the fans were disappointed, but it was a good year for the Cleveland Indians overall when you look at the big picture of things.
Well, you know what? A little bit of trivia here, not to put you on the spot, but which team had more wins? Would it be the 1997 Indians that went to the World Series, or was it this year's Cleveland Indians squad?
I'm going to guess it's probably this year's squad, we'll guess.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, squeaking in the wild card, and it was crazy down the stretch, having to win 10 in a row, and having the Rays biting at your heels, and the Rays, the Rays and the Rangers rather. It made for some great baseball. I mean, the playoffs essentially started for us, mid-September. So yeah, we didn't advance, but I mean, every game was one of those win or go home kind of scenarios because we had so many teams clawing at us. But I mean, yeah, this team actually won more than the 1997 Indians that were 1 out away from winning a World Series down with the Florida Marlins, well, the Miami Marlins, whatever, whoever it is. Yeah, but really quick before we just kind of wrap the Indians, because I want to get to the fun stuff real quick. But talk about Salazar. What are we supposed to hope for in Salazar? Because I'll tell you what, watching those first couple innings, I was thinking no hitter. I was really thinking no hitter. Yeah, call me crazy. I'm the eternal optimist when it comes to sports, the pessimist when it comes to politics and world affairs. But I really liked what I was seeing out of that Salazar kid. Any thoughts on it? Could this guy become an ace for the squad?
Well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, Salazar was drafted when he was 16 years old out of the Dominican Republic by the Indians. He's 23 years old, and I think the reason Terry Francona went with him is because he does have that really good stuff. I mean, his heater, goes, into triple digits, but he has a good curveball, and his composure is just very impressive for a 23-year-old. So, a lot of people, I think once he started, he was striking out a lot of the Rays players in the beginning, and eventually it started to wear off where he just left one up on Delman Young. And, Delman Young is that veteran player that likes the ball up in middle of the plate, and Salazar made that mistake, and that got the Rays going a little bit. But to look at Salazar's future, I mean, he's a guy that, was at Double-A to start the season, and then the Cleveland Indians brought him up, and he's been dominant ever since. So you look at Salazar, he's going to have a bright future for the Indians, and I think he could be an ace. Justin Masterson still has good stuff. McAllister and Corey Kluber. I mean, you have a good young staff, but Salazar seems like he wants the ball in his hands at that time. And not to say the other guys don't, but I think this kid's going to be a very impressive pitcher, and look out for him next year.
And I sure hope that we don't end up doing what we've done so many times with CC Sabathia and Cliff Lee. We groom them here, and then we go watch our baby birds grow up with the Yankees or the Phillies or some crap like that. I'm so sick and tired of being the farm system for the big money markets. And, yeah, I really hope the Dolans are going to put some money into it. Okay, another final question on the Indians. Who's coming up in the free agent crop next year? Who do you have your eye on? Where do you think this team needs the most improvement? Realistically, what do you see them trying to do in the offseason as we kind of build toward what a lot of folks said was Terry Francona's early arrival party. They all expected this to happen, but maybe not this soon. So if we kind of crash the gates a year early, how do we make it better for next year?
Well, I think they're going to obviously need to think of some big bats in the lineup, because you noticed in the Tampa Bay game, they had runners on and could really do nothing with it. So I think, what they need to do are that's where they need to focus on. Jason Kipnis mentioned, having if we need to get some big free agents like Robinson Cano is a free agent, but he wants big-time money, and Kipnis said he'd move to third to bring him to second. Now, with the money he's demanding, there's no way the Dolans are going to spend that kind of money. But there should be, I'm not sure exactly what free agent bats are out there, but you're going to see the Indians focus on some bats because obviously the bullpen and the starting pitching staff has done a good job this year. They're very young, so they're tied up for a little bit. I think Perez and Asdrubal Cabrera are gone. Now, Ubaldo Jiminez is also a guy that could be gone, but I think him and Scott Kazmir are going to stay here, and I hope the Indians bring them back. But big bats are what this team needs in the middle of that lineup. Just to, you got guys on base, let's bring them around and have some threats in the middle of that lineup. Because I don't think Nick Swisher hitting, he does have 20 home runs or so, but that's not going to really fear other teams, especially when you go against this line. There's not really 2 or 3 guys you fear. Carlos Santana was decent. He hit the ball very well this year for average and had some home runs, but no guys you fear like the Detroit Tigers have in the middle of that lineup.
Oh, yeah, it's a big difference. By the way, everybody listening, make sure you follow Rob on Twitter at RTRAUTY, RTrouty, and follow his podcast, Sports on Tap, at SOT Podcast. By the way, yours is Sports on Tap. We're called the Unhappy Hour, so maybe at the Unhappy Hour we're serving Sports on Tap. I kind of like this.
That's right.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's just do a brief station identification break. Let's come back on the other side and talk some Cleveland Browns and their 3-game winning streak.
You are listening to the New American Media.